Happy New Year and welcome to our webinar series on preparing for the show and opportunities to have a successful show. Today we're going to cover fundamentals of a well-designed booth, and our expert visual merchandiser, Matthew Goodman, coming live from us from New York City today, is going to take you through several different key design elements that will help you drive traffic and have a great booth presentation at the Housewares show in just a few short months. So I'm going to turn it over to Matthew and we'll take it from here.
Hey, thanks a lot, Nancy, and everybody at the Housewares show. This is really exciting to be here. And like I said, I'm broadcasting live today from New York, so Happy New Year from New York. And to our friends in Chicago and all around the world, we're really looking forward to seeing you March 10th through 13th. I'll be on site. I also wanted to let you know that I'm broadcasting from a place where the internet may be a little shaky today. So if I get cut off, I'll hop right back on. So stick with us. So basically, this is the fundamentals of a well-designed booth. This is the second time and really like the first, full calendar year that we're presenting this webinar. It is being recorded and will be posted on the IHA website under the Education tab. For further information or more introductions, please call Nancy Michael, who just introduced me. She's the Senior Manager of the Trade Show Business Development or your sales rep at 847-692-0139. So basically, I'll be presenting today. I'm an honors graduate from Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, where I returned there to be an adjunct professor in display and visual merchandising major. I'm also a licensed interior designer. I hold a national qualification for interior design, and I just recently passed my PMP project management exam. So I understand the design aspect, but also like the operations, nuts and bolts, and the project management aspect. And I've been in trade shows for quite some time. So you're welcome to take a picture of this and save it for my contact information. And I'll be available to all IHA show members for consultation either in advance of the show or on site. And I'll take and answer questions throughout the presentation. So please join me. I am a visual merchandise expert with 20 years of experience. And like I said, I have a lot of global trade show background. I've also worked for national retail giants like Victoria's Secret, Macy's, Lord & Taylor, a lot of shopping mall developers. So today we'll uncover the essentials needed to elevate your booth presentation across all price points. And the IHA is launching, this is their first year for the official launch of within the year is the Best in Booth Award based on many of the topics in this webinar. So visit the housewareshow.org site for more information and sign up today. So contact Nancy if you're interested in that, or you can access this information through the marketing kit. A little bit more about the design awards are exclusive to our show. You can pre-registered exhibitors are considered for on-site competition and awards in the areas of creative lighting, graphic communication, logo presentations, merchandising, display fixtures, and ways the product is presented, and the total campaign message. These are topics we'll focus on today. So if you're planning on an awesome booth display, please feel free to pre-register for the Excellence in Booth Design Awards at the housewares.org website. Housewares.org website. And you know what? I'll also be on site. So have me come on by. I'd love to see you. So this section offers guidance. Okay, we're going to kind of start from the basics. Property use, color application, graphics, lighting, display fixtures, product placement, and move-in suggestions. So let's kind of start with property use. So in many popular movies and theater productions and retail stores, they use properties called props to set a tone and tell a story. So this helps to define a time period, a location, and guidance for the audience through narratives leading to the conclusion, which hopefully in our case is a sale or close a deal. Props can also create a great deal with conveying the product line essence, understanding of your product use, and increasing chances of buyers entering your booth. So for example, props aid in conveying the essence of a product line with a real quick glance. Like our friends here at 10 Strawberry Street, which is an exhibitor like right in the front of the hall you'll see on site, they put up a really giant kind of like glitzy mirror-clad prop of a giant like meditating Buddha. I mean, that's like really complex, you know, or you could just show like something as simple as like lines in your woven style tableware. So, you know, it all kind of like depends on the essence and the mood that you can need to help have props help tell a story. Like in the left side, the props are actually like the vases that are kind of hanging from above, or even on the right side, the props are like this like wisteria in the glass vases. But you know, you could really easily substitute out your metal stirring spoons. And then props also like kind of convey a way that merchandise is to be used and an attribute. So for example, the stemless wineware on the bottom right, that prop is like a cutting board, and it's like purposely cut a little, you know, askew to show that these items can hold liquid and they don't slide around, and they have different attributes on how to like be held as well. So props really kind of aid in telling us this story quite quickly. You can introduce a textured background, and you can better tell a story of merchandise displays. Like on the top left area is how to show like a 4th of July kind of picnic. On the right is introducing like more textured kind of props to show kind of like an earthier background of the type of merchandise. You can introduce, like I said before, a textured background can tell a better story to display the merchandise. So for example, the cookers and the hot thermos holders are the pieces of merchandise. The props that are showing it are like the wooden risers. You know, the wooden risers don't actually come with a product, and that's really not part of the packaging. It's just like the prop that kind of like holds it up as well. So it's kind of like a half prop, half display fixture. We'll get a little bit into that, you know, a little bit later, but the props can be used to help tell a story and like narrate a story. I mean, look how like out of the box this is and creative this is. Yeah, I'm going to show you some little bit more out of the box items that are really creative as well.
Matthew?
Oh, yes?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So the question is, these photos are so creative. What if I'm not that creative, and how do I pull together a display that makes it look like I'm creative?
Right. You know, that's a really good question. I get that a lot, and I've gotten that a lot like on the show floor as well. You know, it's like a person in the office who may be assigned in like out of the operations, or maybe even like the shipping and handling area to, you know, develop a display that has to look creative and looks like they, you know, graduated from design school or something. What I'm kind of like getting at here is the fact that you don't have to like be super duper creative. And also, you know, this is a 10 by 10 booth that we're starting from and working our way up to booths that are bigger. What I'm saying is, you know, you can definitely go into, let's say, your company brochure, and there are usually display props that are in your company brochure, your website, that are on display, and then you can work and weave those into your physical display attributes as well, like such as Neat Freak. What Neat Freak does, they actually just really exploded their merchandise in terms of the size. You know, also, let me go back. I didn't touch on these pictures too much. These are actually displays that are inspired by other industries. You can look at other industries too. Products can be used as props to help tell a story. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out and make like a, you know, a creative amorphic pie pan structure behind your, you know, display. But what I am saying is that, you know, it's okay to think of products that can be used to turn into props and help tell a story. Like this is a shoe store, but really it's made of pot and pan lids, is this giant shoe. So, you know, I don't know if it's that like fair of me to say, you know, go and make a giant, you know, shoe. But I definitely think that you could pull something like this off on a you know, smaller scale to help tell a story. You know, imagine just like a display of like a pile of plates that are neatly displayed. I think it would be really quite striking. I hope I've been able to kind of like answer that question a little bit for you. I get that question a lot. So I'm going to move on to color and texture and applications. So a lot of the things that happen here are really inspired by our own exhibitors. So Gary Seehoff, who's the president of Sophistiplate, he's quoting and saying, "It's easy to pull together a beautiful display without breaking the bank." So a word about color here. Gary and his crew place their items against a neutral background to allow merchandise to stand out. Oh, by the way, guys, these are all paper items. They're paper goods. The sophisticated background color suggests an upscale quality of this product line. So, I mean, we wouldn't think of paper plates to be on display in such a sophisticated area, but, you know, Gary's got this feeling of like, hey, let's do something beautiful and paint up the background and put in display windows, but not break the bank. So color is really a significant tool used in booth presentations and visual merchandising. Combined with the use of interesting texture and color, it can be used to make visitors feel different emotions, suggest associations about the product attributes, like if something's high-end, influence the buyer behavior, evoke different reactions. So through color, textures like faux stone and slate suggest like a rugged kind of country look, almost like Ralph Lauren, something like that. Smooth textures like polished metals and glass evoke a sleek urban look. So a lot of you have like real sleek urban type of merchandise. I think that would be really cool to show. Goods can be presented within a monochromatic color scheme. This is actually like, if I were to say, you know, this is, you know, centerfold and this is breathing space, this is the display that I would say is a great thing to stop on, and you guys can take some pictures on this while I leave it up for a while and talk about it. But this is not a museum or a gallery. This is a trade show, guys. This is the one that I was referring to when I was saying you could put a nice pile of plates up in a monochromatic color scheme and make it look really interesting. And this is like the inspiration from the bride with the plates as her bridal gown. So, I mean, if I had the ability to, I would almost like split the screen at this very moment. I just didn't know the other call was coming in. But if I could say, you know, in your minds, if you could go back to the bridal gown and say, hey, we can do something like this, which is up on screen now based on what we saw as an inspiration from the bridal gown. I think it would be just fantastic. I mean, I think this is a beautiful display, guys, and I'm just amazed that it's in a wonderful setting like we're going to be doing business in March shortly. So goods can be presented within a monochromatic color scheme. We're talking about color. I mean, monochromatic meaning like one type of color, one family of color. Goods can be presented within a color scheme of limited selection. So you could, now that we talked about the props, you can see how like the props are adding A, texture and color into the display, but B, showing how the merchandise is actually being used. So really props do a lot to educate as well as throw a selection of color in. And they can all, props and goods can be presented with a color scheme of limited selection. But again, you know, this is like a good picture to show about propping because you're showing that wonderful texture cloth on the background as well to show kind of like the earthiness and the spirit of the product. So it doesn't have to be expensive to throw in some props, but it does have to be well thought out. Goods can be grouped together by similar texture and shape. And goods can also be grouped together on the same texture background if they're not really that similar. This will hold the story together for a little more cohesion. For example, to the bottom right, the barbecue display would honestly really not hold together if it didn't have that wonderful wooden background. So become inspired by displays with non-traditional colors as well. This display featured glassware, and it was on site, and it would translate well to showcase a number of items in a horizontal format. It's Love. They were, by the way, one of the exhibitors who placed in our exhibition and Best in Booth Design Awards last year, but I think it is a good example of an envelope of a booth that would translate well on many levels to many types of merchandise. So you're all welcome to take pictures of this as well. I'm going to leave that up for a second because I would definitely recommend to take a screenshot of this guy because we're really proud of it. And you know, goods can be presented with a color scheme and a limited selection while introducing a textured display surface. And they can also set a tone and mood for the display. So for example, these are 3 separate trade show displays that I shot, all from the Houseware show, but they also have the same texture kind of feel that moves through color. So it has the red and the white, and they show a juxtaposition of the smooth textures with the kind of like rougher textures. So you can see that, you know, you can play, if you've got a minimal amount of colors that you can deal with and that you're bound to through your company branding, you're also welcome to explore different textures within your booth too. And I also found this was kind of cool. I'm at trade shows a lot, different types of trade shows. So become inspired by displays in other industries, borrowing inspiration from this furniture display at the Contemporary Furniture Fair. This Housewares exhibit shows goods in similar format of color and texture on the bottom right. So they both have the raised white display plinth platforms that cut diagonally across the display area. And then they also show goods that are plastic in texture as well as similar colors. And moreover, they also show the logos or the signage on the side of the plinth. I just thought this was really inspiring to see that you can either go through other trade shows or even in your retail community, check out what they have in the displays and then translate it into your own display booth. So goods can be presented within this monochromatic color scheme now, yet with different textures. So, you know, this is a giant like chandelier that's, you know, hung low on purpose. Like I said, I don't think it's fair of me in your fundamentals webinar to say go out and get a giant chandelier. I don't think it's that feasible. But I do think it's really a good thing to know that you can put your sleek merchandise on display in front of something that's a little more crunchy and chunky in texture. And it'll really make that sleek merchandise look much more sleeker. So I think that's like a really fun looking display and a very good thing to become inspired by. Now here's something that was right on our show. So mixing textures like glass and wood makes a regular booth into like a featured gem. So imagine stripping this booth back without the glass envelope. I'm not so sure it would be as strong, but with the glass envelope, it's just really, it's awesome. And it's a beautiful booth. It just rocks, and we're really proud of it. So we're going to move on to graphics. The use of the graphics in photography and display booths is really an effective way to grab attention and communicate information to the buyers. Most common forms of communication in trade shows is through text and signage. So, you know, they will announce new products, order minimum, and show specials. And the signage should be short and clear and communicate the brand's marketing message quite quickly. So on site we had Casabella and Flint. These printed logos and slogans capture the spirit of the company presentations. More about like more printing logos and graphics. By the way, Neat Freak to the bottom right, that's actually their exterior wall. It's a little bit like a trompe-l'oeil. It almost looks like you could walk into their display booth, but that's actually just a flat wall. Again, to the top left, that's a flat wall as well. So if you have a flat wall, and even like Casabella to the bottom right, you know, you could do things with it dimensionally, add some more brightly colored graphics, and really enhance the lines that you have or the company image that you'd like to promote to educate buyers about newness, selection, promotions, or product attributes. Take advantage of all the areas of the real estate. So this is where I get kind of on the operations end. Booths over 1,000 square feet are eligible to hang signs from the ceiling with a sales manager pre-approval. But even if your booth might not be eligible or I'm sorry, might be eligible to hang signs from above, it may not be necessary to utilize ceiling hung signage. So our friends at Keurig, they have a booth that's over 1,000 square feet, but they did not hang anything from the sign, everything from the ceiling, everything there is floor supported. So that's a very interesting way to get your logo up high. So use of signage opportunities also educate buyers about newness, selection. I mean, there's a lot of video that's being shown now, and I would say the use of video is growing a little bit more and more in our show. And also our friends at Nespresso to the right are showing that their goods and their coffee is grown in Colombia, which is a really great thing to just really set the tone. Your company logo, yeah, sure.
I have a question, but it relates to photos and graphics.
Okay.
And the question, can I just grab photos from the internet to have printed and put on display within my booth?
Okay, that's a really good question too. I get that a lot, you know, because we're so web oriented here in our culture. Well, two reasons why I would I would not, you know, recommend that, and I would kind of veer you the other way. One is a legal issue, whether you're allowed or not to actually use that item and then post that image in a space where there'll be a crowd of people viewing it. But the other thing is that technically a lot of the images that are like on the web are of a low resolution, and when you blow them up, they become pixelated and quite blurry. So I know that most printers prefer to use pixels that are 300 dpi, dots per square inch, for their images. So that's kind of like two reasons why I would not recommend to basically, you know, pinch stuff from the web. You really want a nice presentation and a nice, crisp, large display picture in your booth. So your company, by the way, I hope I explained that well enough. I'm going to move on. Your company logo can be placed squarely on the back wall of your booth, but can be equally as effective on the side walls, like toward the front, kind of like our friends at Live Vivid. Most overhead signage is floor supported, like here. This type of signage needs to adhere to height restrictions per your booth configuration. And just work with your sales manager in advance of the show to assure matching of the rules and regs. Same thing with here. So these logos and announcements are floor supported. They are not ceiling supported. Here, it is ceiling supported. Most overhead signage can be ceiling hung as shown in this example, but the ceiling hung installations are for booths with pre-approval over 1,000 square feet. So we talked a little bit about video, and you know, we're seeing more and more video in the display presentation. So feel free to incorporate your video presentations as an integral part of the stand design. Compare monitor rental prices with retailing prices when developing your costs. So basically, it might be cheaper to go out to your local big box retailer once you have your feet on the ground in Chicago and buy a monitor and pop it up in your booth than it would be to rent from the official AV supplier. So just double check those prices. We're going to move on to lighting. You know, lighting's such a huge thing and such a huge component. It adds and tells a story about your space and really sets the tone. Whether a company provides a general wash of light to illuminate mass merchandising, or if a business is likely to be focused on high-end products to feature goods with specialty lighting. So union labor generally electrifies lighting in the convention center. Exhibitors can install and plug in their own light fixtures. So be sure your cords are correctly installed, covered, and tucked in neatly, like, you know, behind your booth. In this section, there are three types of lighting terms we'll use in the lighting industry: ambient, task, and accents. For ambient lighting, this is also known as general lighting, and radiates like a safe and comfortable level of brightness and allows you to see and walk around the show floor. So here's our tip. This may not be enough lighting to correctly show your product. There's also task lighting. This provides illumination in your work area and may be used in with different bulb types and different shapes and sizes like clip-on lamps, desk lamps, and reading lamps. So I showed a picture of a desk lamp and how it would kind of almost translate into the trade show application that would clip onto the top part of your booth. Accent lighting adds drama to a booth by creating visual interest, which is used to draw the eye in for interesting piece or focal point within the stand. So here's an example of some accent lighting by Nespresso, which is the white lights that are pendant lights hanging above the pedestals, and then also our friends at Bodum put up like this, I guess you could call it like this curvature type of chandelier fixture. So those are both the types of accent lighting. So here's the types of lamps that are used on site. First, I'm going to start with our tip. The light bulbs in the lighting industry are called lamps. So there's the A lamp, which is really the lamp that everybody thinks of when they get an idea, like in the old-fashioned cartoons, that style. It provides warm general illumination. It's incandescent. Okay, I'm back. Can you all hear me? I understand that my audio selection was lost for a moment.
We can hear you, Matthew.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. We just cut out for a second. I'm just going to pick up with the types of lamps. This type of lamp also comes in an LED as well for a cooler and incandescent look. So there's also types of par lamps, which is kind of like a miniature spotlight for warm focused illumination. Sometimes they are LED and halogen, and other lamps that you'll see on site are ER lamps for warm general wash. Now you guys probably know a lot about these lately, the quartz halogens. They're like for like cooler, punchier tones. They're used a lot also, not only in our industry, but for jewelry. By the way, when you're handling this, please be sure to put on cotton gloves, because like any oils from your hands, like if you have a muffin in the morning, that'll actually burn out the light bulb, that lamp faster. They also do come on spools now, and they result in like a cool, punchier, sparkly tone. And sometimes the MR16s come with a bi-pin mount. So, they don't, just be aware that when you're buying your lighting equipment that it's all matching, because we're used to just a general screw-in light sometimes too. Fluorescent lamps are cool, and they usually are with like a wide beam spread and soft shadows. This is a really good example of the fluorescents that are used as like rear lighting.
Matthew?
And they have yeah?
We have a question.
Okay, great.
The question is, are there certain lamps restricted at the show? Are there like certain lighting lamps would be restricted?
Yeah, the actual lamp type, which is like the light bulb, I believe is not restricted, but you do have to double check with your sales manager and probably with Freeman regarding the electrical use of wattage. Wattage per your order for electricity in your booth. Sure. The display fixtures we're going to move on to the type of furniture used. These are like pieces of furniture that are used often by retailers and wholesalers to display product. So having merchandise visibly placed within each fixture is really essential. Buyers place orders on what they see featured in your booth by touching or using the product. So place the merchandise on the display fixture to prominently show your newly launched items. I talk a lot about display fixtures here. Guys, I realize this isn't like the most exciting part, but I have seen exhibitors arrive and they're so excited to show their product and they're so involved with their product that they actually really kind of forgot how to display it and on which furniture to place it on. That they don't have that in their display booth by the time that the show is opening. So I really want to kind of get you revved up for this. So before purchasing a display fixture for your booth, consider that your merchandise must be easily accessed. So it's really purchasing the right display fixture per your product. So placing items on something as simple as easels to present themselves in a standing position adds dimension and poise to the display and keeps product from blocking other pieces of product. And here's another example of like the merchandise on the bottom right that kind of cascades up. It's just such a great look. Placing products on the easels present themselves in a standing position. And then check out that graphic behind the top left. I mean, that really just adds to it. It really is very exciting in the bottom right and live vivid as well. So something as easy as easels or mini platforms and pedestals to present themselves in a standing position. It keeps the items from blocking each other. And placing products on mini pedestals to present themselves in like a more creative position. And on one side is like a little bit more customized, and the left side is a little bit more like just a standard table. And just may do the trick, just getting a standard table and maybe painting it.
Matthew?
So some company, yes.
Matthew?
Should I go back?
Do you have another question?
Yes? Oh, that's great. There's so many questions.
Do you have suggestions to nicely tell visitors not to touch the display?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, we get a little bit into that in the later part. So this person is kind of forecasting my future in the webinar. But one thing is just to bring extra items and put the items out on display, like the duplicates that can be touched. I mean, rather than that's like one theory. Rather than telling an exhibitor, a buyer, don't touch for the whole show. How about presenting something and saying, well, you can touch this one, but come deeper into the booth and we'll really make a sale from the better one. That's like if you've got enough prototypes to produce for duplicates. And the other thing is to kind of place the item on display in an area that they just can't touch really. They can't approach it that well. I'm not so sure I'd put the item that's not supposed to be touched in the front edge of your booth against the aisle. So I also think it has to do with product placement. I'm not so sure I would put up a sign that says don't touch, because you don't want to turn anybody off in your booth. You want to really have them come on in to create that conversation and increase sales. I hope I've been able to answer that and create kind of like a welcoming environment physically for the product as well as the buyer. With that answer, some companies choose to feature their goods on custom fixtures, and some companies choose to showcase their goods on stock fixtures, like in the bottom right. And some companies almost do like a hybrid, like a semi-custom, which is the stock item with a special unique quality that shows the merchandise. And some people just choose to show a stock fixture against, let's say, the floor, which is a table, and then more of a customized fixture against the wall. So you can feel free to be a little bit more versatile in your display fixtures, or within the display fixtures, showcase goods by combining custom fixture parts. Like, so there's a marble tabletop on the top right with stock fixture legs as like table legs as well. So I would say like the general overview of my theory is don't overlook the use of stock fixtures. With some signage and props and maybe some paint, they may just do the trick. So let's talk about product placement. This is really kind of like the meat of the conversation. So according to Adam Schachter, he's the president and co-founder of FHE. We work tremendously hard to ensure, hold on, let me collapse this one part. Okay. We work tremendously hard to ensure that we not only have innovation in our product lines, but in the way we display and present them to our retail partners at the show. This means that at each and every year, we focus on developing a new booth strategy to ensure that we have freshness at the show. Booth design and innovation is a key driver to our success. So here's a word about Adams and his newness, meaning new product. Adam and his crew place their new items on display in key areas. He's our hero. More on that in the next pages of this section. So I'm going to leave this up for a couple seconds so you guys can take a screenshot of this, because this is a really interesting quotation, and he's really nailed it. It could almost be like the title of our webinar. He's really captured it. The overarching concept in displaying goods in a wholesale setting is to consider how your selection of merchandise will look in store. Capture the best way your merchandise will present itself for final retail destination. Offer an opportunity for your buyers to visualize how well your goods will be seen within their own store environments. So from this point, we're going to talk about from wholesale to retail. So these are actual, on the top, actual wholesale displays from on site. This is from our show. On the bottom, I actually went to Target, and I took a picture with their permission, FYI, of the Nespresso displays. And you can see what your merchandise may end up looking like. I mean, it may be almost a literal translation, but you have to realize there might be, you know, other boxes that have nothing to do with your display above your special area within the retail store. But you can see toward the right, I have a little bit more of a focused detail, and there is almost a literal translation. So I mean, that was very successful. Also on site, Sip by Swell was at our show, and you can see it was almost a direct translation gone, you know, once it went through the Target corporate and got approved into the branches, how it really went almost, it was a literal translation from the retail, from wholesale to retail. So when you're setting up your wholesale display at our show coming up, you know, consider how they're going to look on site, hopefully in the retail environment. So the next step is to study how your group of merchandise behaves in a space and how it is best featured. Get a feel of the most trafficked area of your booth and have the ability to depict the flow of how your buyers arrive at the booth. So divide your goods into 3 groups: newness, meaning new product, impulse, and flow. Goods that are within your company and that are being newly promoted, we're going to call newness, and this is our new hero. So within this grouping, you must identify your items that are poised to be your top performers and goods that are being introduced at the International Home and Houseware Show. These are your heroes, your new hero. The impulse merchandise are goods that are poised for add-ons to increase units per transaction when ordering. This type of merchandise is to refer to as our sidekick. Within this group, you have identified the secondary items that will enhance the larger order, and you've also placed it in a visible position near our new hero. So we've got like the new hero, the sidekick, the flow merchandise, goods that are created to hold a cluster of items together, yet are not necessarily poised as the top 2 performers. So companies that offer kits of these items usually have this type of merchandise, like tongs to a martini shaker assembly or a checkered tablecloth to a picnic set. So take photos of your display booth to document the final design and merchandise placement. Keep the presentation of your merchandise clear and distinguishable, and don't let the overwhelming use of products or display props become the villain by upstaging your merchandise and potentially eroding sales. So this is, you know, in the part in the old-fashioned, you know, movie theater when they would play, you know, on the organ, dun dun, you know, the villain struck here. Like, what happened to this merchandising selection? It kind of blows away all the theories and things that we talked about earlier in the webinar and that we live so closely by at the show. So I would say to kind of like move away from anything that the villain would strike to and move to how our hero comes to the rescue. So the examples of merchandising displays feature our hero product. New heroes can be repeated or shown singularly. And examples of merchandising displays featuring hero products, they're usually placed against the aisle to grab passers-by. Here's a lot of more examples of merchandising hero products that are placed against the aisles to grab our passers-by. And goods, and generally heroes, can be shown in color ways, meaning almost like the rainbow of colors, the color selection, more color ways. But you could also show
Matthew?
a good, sure.
Matthew, got another
Yes?
question.
Fantastic.
The question is, do you suggest not showing packaging even if it would be part of the display in store?
You know what? I actually talk a lot about packaging with a number of exhibitors on site, and it almost seems to be like it's almost becoming like an integral part of our retail merchandising. So if you're choosing to show packaging as a part of the display, do it and own it. I know that sounds a little like esoteric, but you know, don't just box, let's say, kind of like as a side thing. Show how the box printing registers and flows if it's meant to go together as a repeat of boxes, and the design would flow from box to box. You know, definitely show that. Show attributes of how the box would be on display, because there's a lot of retailers who show the goods with the boxes. Like for one retailer I can think of right off the top of my head is Bed Bath & Beyond. They show the goods out of the box, and then right next to it they show the goods in the box for, they call it, my theory on that is call it one to show and one to go, meaning you're showing one piece of merchandise and you're selecting the box for one to go to the cash register. So if you want to do that, you know, show on your wholesale visual merchandising scheme within your display booth the one to show and one to go. And I think it may resonate with the buyer a little bit more so if that is your dream buyer. If your box isn't that you know, refined, or the box packaging isn't there yet really, especially if you've got like a newer product to the market, I might want to hold off on showing that box on display, and you know, talk about it a little bit later, or show the box, you know, as a later part of the sales presentation after you've made your initial visual introduction. I hope I've been able to answer that question. Good. We're going to get back a little bit to showing the goods as a whole story. So goods can be shown in stories. So this kind of is almost like a grandma's cottage story, like on the beach, if you will. And goods can also be shown in boutique-style presentations or mass merchandising style presentations. So it kind of depends on like not only your product, but who your dream buyer would be. So try different ways of showing your goods and have fun with your product presentation. And this company, Live Vivid, who you probably know by now through the webinar, they have their goods on display using many techniques, from laying out products to showing the items and standing within the easels and cross-mixing their merchandise. So have fun. Here's an example of some planograms as well that I've tried to like really research. So for the bigger companies, take photos of your display booth. Really, that's also for the smaller companies, but the bigger companies need to like track their merchandise a little bit more so, just because there's a lot of SKUs. Take photos of your display booth to document the final design and merchandise placement for future reference or planogram development. So Barbara Cook's planogram example is here, and then we have something very similar in real life at Walmart, and yes, I have their permission to take the photos and put them in the webinar. Take photos of your display booth to document the final version, because you can see how like there's almost a literal transaction and translation for product implementation. So at this part of the display webinar, we're also going to talk about the nuts and bolts and the logistics, because what we've noticed is that if you're assigned within your company to set up the display and be part of like the creative process and set the display forth.
Matthew?
Yes?
Matt?
Yes.
Hello? Okay,
Yep.
I got another one. Can we send you
Okay.
pictures of our previous booth layouts to get suggestions on how we can improve it?
You sure can. Well, I'd love to have them. What I'll do is I will have on the last slide of this webinar my contact information again, and you guys can take a picture of that and save it and then contact me through that information. But yeah, I would love to see it. So what I was saying is that if you're basically assigned within your company as the project manager to be in charge of the booth design, we've noticed by default you're probably in charge of the move-in information as well and knowing more about that. So here are like top tips, if you will. So first of all, Danny at Coziel says a better booth display means a bigger smile. So we say Daniel and his crew emphasize the use of props and colors and graphics and product placement, fixtures, and move-in suggestions. So this is Danny and his pal on site for move-in day. So that's a little bit of our, display humor here. There are 3 general methods of delivering product to your booth for setup purposes. There's pre-shipping for larger parcels. There's personal drop-off through the ASUV program, and there's pre-shipping for smaller parcels. So visit the housewares.org website for more information on this. But for pre-shipping, we recommend this for exhibitors who are from outside of Chicago and have heavy freight and are shipping from or perhaps from another convention center. It's not recommended to ship fragile, expensive prototypes or items or parcels that advertise the content. So don't, have a big stamp on outside of your box saying, expensive TV inside. We would not recommend that. But you must ship to the holding warehouse or convention center within the specific time frame prior to the show. That's in your setup manual. And depending on your booth package, most goods will be delivered directly to your booth. The ASUV program is like the hand drop-off program. This program is recommended if you're located nearby. You can fit your items into a vehicle no larger than a van, have expensive or one-of-a-kind prototypes. You can park and unpack within 20 minutes while delivering your items to your booth using your own manually operated cart. That's kind of a big thing, guys, is your own manually operated cart. For participation and eligibility, you must have a vehicle no larger than a van, 2 people to the vehicle, like while one waits, the other shuttles, the parcels to the booth, and a valid parking pass. Small parcels. If your smaller individual parcel must be sent separately from your larger shipment, it's advisable you ship it to yourself at your hotel. Small parcels are usually delivered to the convention center, but may not make it to your booth in time for show opening. So during the show, for expensive items or prototypes, there's a designated free security lockup area within the guarded overnight storage in each hall. Don't store your valuables in your empty boxes. These will be stored by Freeman, and they're not accessible during the show. So when you're unpacking and Freeman says, hey, can I take your boxes? I see that you've got your empty stickers on them. Do not store valuables or anything that you need in there until after the show. During the show, and included in your booth fee, is Freeman's Concierge Elise program. This is a premium level of customer service that is for our exhibitors, and exhibitors can remain in their booth to conduct business with Freeman while handling concerns. And those concerns are traditionally handled at a nearby desk, but now you can stay in your booth to continue your business with your buyers while the Freeman representative will come by with kind of like a handheld computer to handle your issues. This provides additional attention and enables the tracking and resolution of exhibitor requests during the run of the show, and the details are on the freeman.com website. So you're all welcome to take a screenshot of this because you never know how it's going to be on the show. We wish you a wonderful and smooth show, but Freeman's there just in case. After the show, generally the goods are shipped out of the convention center by the same method in which they arrived. So check your ESM, your Exhibitor Setup and Service Manual, and ask Freeman or your EAC about the outbound shipping directions. And the show offers a product donation program if you wish to donate your product to a charity rather than ship it back after the show. So the IHAS has pre-authorized charities for this program. Visit your setup manual for information on the donation program and list of selected charities. And please do not abandon your product in your booth. This is not considered donation. You will get a fee and a fine for abandoning product in your booth without matching it up to a charity. So does your booth hit the target? Ask me to check out your booth while on site. Your stand could be featured on this page too. I would love to feature your booth, especially if it's beautiful and you're proud of it. and it captures all of the elements and attributes that we talked about in today's webinar, and it just generally rocks. So thank you for being a great audience. The creator of this segment, that's me, Matthew Goodman, is available for individual consultations exclusively for exhibitors at our show. This is my website, my LinkedIn information, and my telephone number and email. For those of you who wanted to take a picture of this, I'll leave this up at the end as well, and this is the last slide. So I hope you've had a great presentation time with me. I had a fantastic time. I love the questions. They were really well thought out. Yep.
Just before we wrap up, there's another question about resources for display structures or fixtures and etc. Other than renting from Freeman, what do you recommend?
Okay, yeah, I mean, first of all, I have to say, you know, just because I work for the show, you can go through Freeman, get yourself educated about what Freeman offers and what they don't offer. Now let's talk about what they do not offer. There is a website called NASFM, National Organization for Display Fixture Manufacturers. I mean, I just rattled that off really fast. I'll actually say it again slowly. National Association for Display Fixture Manufacturers. And I think the website off the top of my head is like nasfm.org. It may be a .org website, just to let you know. And there are many display fixture manufacturers, and you could just generally, oftentimes when what I've done is when I Google something and I Google search it, I'll cross-reference it, and generally that display fixture manufacturer is part of that organization. So you know that they're reputable as well. But for me to answer that specifically, I'd have to really take a look at your merchandise and your merchandise selection and your propping, which I'd love to do as well in advance of the show. But that's like the organization that I would recommend that you kind of start at.
Also, I'll just kind of throw out, we here at the association often recommend IKEA as a resource, and kind of that you can carry in the RTA furniture. And save yourself on the drayage and the weight of shipping. A lot of people will Uber or cab it out to IKEA and come back with tables, etc., and then just not even ship them back. But to Matthew's point, you cannot just leave things in your booth. Those tables or whatever fixtures or structures you may put in your booth for display have to be gone after the show, or you do get a fine. But IKEA is a good resource.
Yeah, IKEA is great. Thanks for bringing that point up. I mean, a lot of the IKEA merchandise can be like Ubered or, you know, lifted back to the show and brought in through the ASUV program. And also, there's other big box retailers around the greater Chicago area, such as Target, even Walmart. So, you know, feel free to look at those guys as well. But I did want to turn you on to the Association for Display Fixture Manufacturers, just in case they don't have anything at Walmart or Target.
Matthew, we have another question about what your fees are. Is there a fee for your service?
For like the first individual consultation, you know, there's no fee, but if we get deeper into it, we may have to discuss something further. But certainly when I'm on site with you guys, I'd be willing to meet with you one-on-one for free as well, for sure.
Okay. Are you still with us, Matthew?
I certainly am.
Good. Okay, so I'll let you kind of wrap it up. Thanks to everybody joining us today. You can always contact myself, Nancy, Michael, or any of your sales managers. We can always patch you through to Matthew if you didn't get his information from the webinar. And as we said at the beginning, it is recorded. It will be up later today. If you want to just review slides or, you know, listen to it again, whatever, it will be available for you as a resource. So thank you. I'll let you close, Matthew.
Sure. Well, and thank you very much. It's been great being here, and I'll see you on site at the show, or you're welcome to call me in advance. I love working with exhibitors. I've been doing it for another number of years. and we'll see you at the show, or we'll talk to you in advance. And thanks for having some great questions. We had a big group today. It was a fabulous webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.